Mr. Kendell, we welcome your appearance here this morning, and we're ready for your opening remarks.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for taking the time to visit with me this morning. I also wanted to take the opportunity to thank you for the time and energy that you're all dedicating to this process. It's significant, and I appreciate it. I also wanted to take the opportunity to introduce a couple of guests that wanted to join me this morning. Ann Holden Kendell is my wife, and my mother, actually Bonnie Kendell, is here today too. And I think it goes without saying, but I want to say it anyway, that without their love and counsel and without their without their love, counsel, and support, I clearly wouldn't be who I am today. And I can't even turn around and look at them because I'm afraid I'll choke up. But I wanted to say that because it's important.
I recognized your wife, so you weren't going to get out of here without introducing her.
Well, good. I'm glad you keep me honest on that. I also submitted a one-pager this morning that I hope would facilitate our discussion. I appreciate you being willing to take that and add it to my application. I see four categories that I think frame my experience and my qualifications for this position. First one's my legal experience. The second one is my life experience. The third one is my professional reputation, and the fourth one is my personal qualities. And I just take the first one first, legal experience. I've got a lot of trial experience. I've tried over 60 trials, jury trials to verdict, hundreds of bench trials through the years. So I spent a lot of time in the courtroom. I spent a lot of time with the rules of evidence and those matters. So the other part of that is the criminal experience. I think that's something that I'd like to see some additional balance, in some of the justices on the Supreme Court. I think right now we have Justice Katie, who has a criminal law background, excuse me. That wasn't the right wording, was it?
You need to check that out if you have some information.
And then also, I know I've got to be careful going out of here. He's probably watching. And then also you've got Justice Apple, who had some criminal experience. I believe his was mostly appellate, but the trial level is, I guess, what I see as important to have some additional diversity, if possible, on the Supreme Court. The civil experience that I have was primarily gained from when I was right out of law school. I did some personal injury and some comp work for about 6 months before I began prosecuting. And then as county attorney, when I was elected county attorney in Warren County, it was a primarily civil job down there. I had 5 assistants who did the bulk of the criminal work. I handled some of the high-profile criminal cases, but it was a lot of time spent with the Board of Supervisors and the various agencies in the county. So I gained a fair amount of experience in public sector employment law, civil rights issues, and just employment law generally, as well as everything from fence viewer disputes to tax assessment, property appeals, property tax assessment appeals, and just open meetings, open records, the kind of things that county attorneys get to do in those semi-rural counties. And that brings up another point that I think is significant about my experience. I've had the opportunity to practice in rural Iowa, suburban Iowa, and urban. Through my positions in Marion County, Warren County, and Polk County, I've gotten exposed to, it's all within the 5th Judicial District, obviously, but it's a real, it's a different practice, quite honestly, and I think it's different for the court from an administrative angle, trying to deal with the different challenges that each of those venues present. So I do have experience in that. One of the other things that probably I don't think many of the other applicants have is executive branch experience. And I think that's significant because of the administrative duties that go with the position on the Supreme Court. The budget issues, and everybody's well aware of the budget challenges we've had. I've faced those challenges as well. It's been on a smaller scale because it was the Office of Drug Control Policy that I was the director of for 4 years. But we suffered the same or similar budget challenges as all the other departments or agencies in state government. So I have experience dealing with those. I have experience dealing with the legislature and working with them to try to adequately fund important programs. And clearly, I think that would be a benefit, especially in these economic times to the judicial branch. I also have, through that executive branch experience, I think I have significant coalition building skills and consensus building skills, which I think is something else that's important for members of the Supreme Court. And you know, I hate to draw back the curtain on the drug czar, you know, because the current one probably won't appreciate me saying it, but you really don't have that much authority as the drug czar. What you end up doing is trying to build consensus and reach out to your stakeholders and community members and other folks in state government to try to you know, get everybody going in the same direction, and if not on the same page, at least going in the same direction. So I do have experience over the last 4 years trying to build consensus and trying to build, you know, coalitions to accomplish what I believe are important things. The second category that I have is life experience, and I think really it goes more to the perspective that it provides me. I think it's probably, I would guess, you know, I don't know everybody who applied that well, and but I think it's a fairly unique life experience probably. I grew up the youngest of 7 kids, blue-collar family. My dad was a factory worker. My mom took in sewing while she was raising the kids. And I was the first of my siblings to graduate from college. You know, I'm very aware of what it's like to struggle and how it feels when things don't always go your way. So I think that helps provide me with a good perspective and I think a healthy level or healthy balance of compassion with balancing that with you know, the desire for accountability and appreciation for the rule of law, which I think is an important thing to have as a judge, because those things factor in to your decision, or should. One of the other things in the life experience side of things is, and I mentioned I know what it's like to struggle. You know, we've had loss. I lost my sister when I was 8 years old. She was 10. When I was in college, my 35-year-old brother also passed away. And the reason I bring that up is to point out that, you know, I'm 39. That's in our application. I don't think I'm the typical 39-year-old. I think I've had life experience that maybe has provided a little bit more seasoning than your typical 39-year-old that you might see. So that's why I bring it up. The diversity of work experience is something else. I've kind of summarized my legal experience, but the non-legal experience that I've had, you know, I've worked since I was 16, and I've worked in everything from car detailing to landscaping to being a valet parking attendant. So I've got a kind of a wide variety of work experience and experience dealing with lots of different types of people, and I feel like I've generally done that quite successfully. The third category that I had delineated was professional reputation, and I think I have a good professional reputation. I think you'll find that the law enforcement in the state that I've worked with, both as county attorney, assistant county attorney, and drug policy director, I believe I have their respect, and I think you know, I've had years of working with them, and when you work with them, you tell them no fairly often, and I think for me being able to maintain that level of respect, even though I've told them no on a number of occasions, I think is important. And likewise, I think I have the respect of the judges who I know and have appeared in front of, as well as the defense attorneys. While the defense attorneys may not have always agreed with my plea offer and thought maybe I should have you know, been more lenient, I think they respected the way I conducted myself. I always absolutely always listened to their argument and considered it. And the biggest thing for me as a prosecutor was to treat everybody the same. And I think people would agree that while maybe they thought I was too harsh in their case, they appreciated the fact that I was consistent and predictable, and they knew, generally speaking, what their client was going to receive in the way of a plea offer from me before they ever asked. And I think that's something that's important in the law, as well as an equal application of it. The last category that I had set out was personal qualities, and you can see them there. I think people would say that I have professionalism and integrity, compassion, that I'm even-tempered, diligent, that I'm fair-minded, that I have attention to detail, and that I have the ability to relate and communicate with a variety of types of people. I believe that I have those qualities. I think other folks who know me probably would agree with that. So basically, to sum it up, at the bottom there, I believe I've got an excellent breadth and depth of experience, and both life and legal experience. I have integrity and an excellent professional reputation, and I have the demeanor, I believe, and the temperament to be a good justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kendell. Let's start with Ms. Walker's side of the table here. Mr. Pace.
Good morning.
Morning.
I am looking at your materials, and in there you talk about, in your present position, that you engage in legislative advocacy at the state and federal level. And there's a lot of talk, we've been talking with a lot of folks the last few days about the budget situation and how we could prevail upon the legislature to perhaps fund the courts a little better. Can you speak to how you might bring those skills to that effort if you're on the court?
Sure. And it'd obviously be a little bit different because I actually was the registered lobbyist for my agency, so the role would be a little different, but I think the perspective and experience that I gained in that position over the last 4 years would be helpful. I think the key is to, I think, make people understand how important the judicial branch is. And for whatever reason, and I don't know, I mean, I've been around, I pay attention, and I think there's some kind of a disconnect there that maybe there's not an appreciation for the work necessarily that the court does for some reason. And I think that's the biggest area that I would try to improve upon, I guess. Like I said, it's a little bit curious to me why that is, but I think the key is to build relationships with legislators and make sure that people get informed, and so they can appreciate the importance of an adequately funded judiciary. And I don't know if they're not open to that message, then you have to find other ways to educate and get the information out. I think legislators are the key, obviously, because they hold the purse strings, and I think whether it's through community members and encouraging those folks, providing them education so they realize the importance, or encouraging them to communicate with their legislator so that the legislature collectively gets a greater appreciation for the value of the work that the judiciary does.
Thank you.
Ms. Dixon.
Good morning, Mr. Kendell.
Good morning.
Just a quick question. Could you speak a little bit to your appellate experience?
I don't have very much appellate experience. I've observed on a number of occasions, but I have not actually engaged in appellate advocacy as a county attorney or an assistant county attorney. I'm sure everybody knows the Attorney General handles the appeals, so I have not had the opportunity to, through most of my practice, to be able to do any appellate work. At the county attorney level, although I did civil work, we have an insurer, and so if it went to litigation, the county hired an insurer, the insured hired outside counsel, and so I participated in a couple of different appellate cases, but not formally as counsel.
If I could just follow up on that, then
Sure.
what would be your plan in terms of getting up to speed if you were to secure a position on the Supreme Court?
Well, I think, what the appellate court does is review trial level work, and I've got extensive experience in trial level writing and work, and I think I have some experience in appellate level, although it's not, the formal acting as counsel. So obviously I'd try to consult, resources that are available to help improve, my perspective on the appellate writing process. But I've written briefs, and I've been involved with appellate cases, so it's not like I'm coming into this with no knowledge of what they do. It's just that I don't have an extensive experience in appellate writing.
Any other questions on this side of the table? Professor Cochran?
Good morning. I noted the same passage in your application that Mr. Pace did, in giving you somewhat a unique perspective. You know, your experience in formulating and drafting legislation, I'm wondering how that might help you as a judge interpret legislation. Basically, to what extent would you take legislative intent into account, and how might you discern what that intent might be?
Yeah, I agree. I think that is an important experience that I have, because I've sat on that side of the table and tried to anticipate every argument, and you know, invariably you miss something. And so I think it's important to understand how that process works, and obviously legislative intent is important, and if you can discern what the intent is, that's relevant to the consideration when you're trying to interpret the statute or whatever the case may be. So I would take that under consideration if I could discern